Welcome back to Voices from the Frontline AI in Action in partnership with Microsoft. I'm Ron Thurston, and today we're exploring one of the largest and most ambitious AI transformations happening anywhere in retail. I'm joined by Dave Glick, Senior Vice President of Enterprise Business Services at Walmart, a leader driving a unified enterprise scale approach to AI that empowers both corporate and frontline associates. From nano agents and super agents to real-time translation, automation, and intelligent workflows for over 1.5 million associates, Dave gives us a rare inside look at how AI is reshaping work at the world's largest retailer. Dave, welcome to the show. I'm really happy and honored that you're here with me today.
Thanks, Ron, for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Pleasure. So I want to just kind of set the stage here for us. So what is enterprise business services at Walmart, and what's the scale and the impact that it has on all of your associates?
Yeah, so Enterprise Business Services is in the technology organization, but we have both technologists and engineering as well as operations. So
Okay.
it's finance tech and operations, people tech and operations, global governance, customer care tech, payments, fraud, and IT. I think that's
Okay.
everything. And in
It's a lot of
addition to
direct
that,
reports.
Uh, yeah, so that's a bunch of direct reports and a bunch of different domains, but it covers all the corporate functions. And I like to say that we ring the registers, we pay the associates, and we close the books. And so, what else do you need in an enterprise company?
Very well said. And I think when we think about the current state of AI, and we're going to dig deep here, but thinking about how it's reshaping the retail industry and you being the largest retailer, what's your vision, say, the next 2 years to 10 years? What is this looking like for you?
Sure. In addition to the domains I support, I got the mission from Doug and Donna and Suresh to put AI in the hands of every campus associate every day. And so we've spent a lot of time figuring out how to do that. And that means letting them use the tools that are out there to do deep research, plus using AI-based tools that we've written for them as the engineering team. But the most exciting thing is that we have been doing training for all of our campus associates on the AI-based tools, and they are writing their own
Wow.
agents.
And we're going to get to that, I think, when we talk about like nano agents and super agents and what that can
Yeah.
mean for the future. And do you see that as one of the most important long-term visions here for the
Yeah,
brand? Yeah.
for sure. And I've always been saying for years, putting engineers close to the customer, good things will happen. And so, how close can you get an engineer to the customer? If they're the same person, that's as close as you get. And so, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you're saying, oh, we're waiting for technology to build us something, or it's below the line for engineering. That's super disempowering for our associates. And so, what we've said is we have a coding agent which you can use. And we've trained 6,000 associates over the last several weeks in this coding agent, and we found sort of a 50% retention rate. So we have thousands of non-engineers out there building stuff to make their lives better.
I mean, the impact that that's going to have at scale for you at the enterprise level is really impressive. I can't wait to watch that happen. You're certainly leading the charge here.
Yeah, and you think about someone who spends 3 hours of their day validating, does this spreadsheet match this spreadsheet, or putting together collateral for a meeting, and you can turn that from a 3 hour thing to a 5 minute or a 50-second
Yeah.
operation, so they can spend their time doing more interesting work, and that's
Hmm.
very empowering for our associates.
Very empowering. And that's kind of my next question, was really thinking about knowing that it's such a well-documented experience about how Walmart's been so people first. How do you maintain that kind of tech-enabled work with being very people-centric? I think it's something that many brands are having conversations about today.
Yeah, and in our mission statement, we are people led and tech powered. And Doug McMillan, our CEO, has said, as long as we are serving humans, we will have humans leading the charge here. But AI is a big
Mm.
lever to help our humans be much more productive and much more engaged. And so my mission is to upskill everybody at Walmart. and that will help Walmart, and it will help the associates, whether they continue at Walmart or they move on to something in the future.
And when you think about how to capture that feedback, what they need, what does that look like for you and all of those teams?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. So we wrote this command line coding agent. One of the engineers did it on a weekend. It's called Code Puppy. And one night we were sitting around here. The team was in town. I said, "What are you guys doing tonight?" They're like, "We were going to go to dinner." I'm like, "You want to vibe code instead with me?" They're like, "Oh my god, we get to vibe code with the SVP." And so we got a case of Diet Coke and set off about 6 in the evening, and we worked for about 6 hours. The idea was to build the agent builder. you know,
Okay.
Input an SOP, get an agent to do that, come out the other side. And it was mostly engineers, but we had a couple folks from my ops team there, and they were like, "We want to use Code Puppy." And so we showed them how to install it. And a week later, they all came back and said, "I built this agent, and I built this thing, I built this to make my life easier." And so like, I thought it was crazy because it's a command line interface. It looked like the Matrix, and I didn't think the business users would like that, but they love it. The next thing that happened is I got invited to a town hall to talk about AI, of course. And I brought John, who was one of our lead vibe coders. And while we did the fireside chat, he built an agent in 20 minutes to show them that we were able to do that. And after that, all the folks in the audience said, "We want to use Code Puppy." And I started getting invitation to more town halls. And I brought John to those, and they said, "We want to use Code Puppy." And so, oftentimes in engineering, we end up building something, then try to get people to use it. And sort of it's a push. And it's super painful to drive adoption. This one, people are pulling, pulling, pulling. And it's sort of gotten away from us in a good way that there's more demand for the tool than there is, us to teach them.
Right. Exactly. Which kind of leads me to my question around, maybe that's what people misunderstand about coding, but what do people misunderstand most about the frontline teams in Walmart based on your experience?
Yeah, I mean, we're focused on my mission is the campus associates more than the folks in the store and the warehouses, but those are
Hmm.
frontline also. And
Hmm.
look, people want to be able to do their jobs well, right? And they want to be empowered and they want to have agency. And the least empowering thing is saying, "Oh, we were going to build something for you, but it's below the line." And so if you've got a team of 5 or 10 people who are doing something, maybe never be above the line compared to a big ERP
Hmm.
migration or payroll modernization or one of those things. And so by putting the tools in the hands for them, they have agency. And
Yeah.
that brings me more joy than anything else we do.
Yeah. I mean, what a beautiful statement to say. We're not only here to improve your experience, but we're going to teach you a skill that you had no idea how to do yesterday. And that
For
says
sure.
something at a point in your career of like a brand new skill that may have seemed unattainable before. I really admire that.
It's interesting because it started out as me trying to push this across the organization or pushing from engineering, but we've seen in our people team that they've done hackathons, and I
Mhm.
was there for doing judging that, and we had 42 different agents that were built over a 3-week period, and many of them, very simple, like I have to validate these two spreadsheets against each other. That used to take me 3 hours. Now I just load them both in and it takes me 30 seconds. And I get those
Wow.
stories every single day. Our finance team had a hackathon and they gave cash prizes, and they're building, I think, what they call process agents, where they're doing it themselves and they can dig into data and do a lot of research, something they've never been able to do before.
Hmm. And so let's jump into that deeper. So I've heard you speak about super agents and nano agents, and so for the audience, can you just share what that is? And then I've heard you speak about Sparky and how this is growing. So if you can kind of give us the basics.
Yeah, let's start with the super agents. We
Okay.
got 4 super agents. One is Sparky, that's focused on customers. Marty, which is focused on suppliers. YB, which is a ton on vibe coding and Walmart. And
Okay.
finally, our associate super agent, which will have a name soon that we can share. I think the associate super agent is the most interesting, partly because I own it, but also because it lets you do, it's very diverse. You can do everything to do your job, as well as manage your work life. And so if you think about the intranet, I assume you have an intranet at your company. Sometimes
Sure.
it's hard to find something on our intranet. And so what we didn't want to do is create, dozens and then hundreds and then thousands of agents that no one could ever find. And so by having the associate super agent up front, you can just go ask that whatever you need, and it will route appropriately to any of the nano agents. And so
Okay.
the idea is sort of a federated model, single front door, single platform, which has routing, telemetry, and sort of the undifferentiated heavy lifting. But then we're building hundreds and then thousands of these nano agents, which are domain specific, single purpose agents. And we came up with the nano agents once. My friend Hari and I were sitting in the airport. He's like, let's call them nano agents. And so I became the chief marketing officer for nano agents. And so we'll see if we can get it to go viral.
Sounds like you. It sounds like you could for sure. And so, to your earlier point, you giving kind of agency to people to build their own nano agent, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
everybody has something that they spend their time doing, which they'd rather be doing more interesting work. And so if they can, and some of them are very small, like, compare this spreadsheet to that spreadsheet.
Hmm.
But, another one is like, and this is something we built, not the users. Well, let me take that back. We built the platform and basically we loaded all of our contracts into a vector DB. And now the procurement team has built dashboards and all kinds of different things saying, show me all the contracts that are going to expire over the next 6 months, or read the contract and see how much of it can be automatable. And
Okay.
very interesting stuff there. And that's something that we loaded the contracts into the vector DB, but the procurement team has gone wild on their own since we did that.
And so, when you think about that, Dave, the idea here of kind of letting people kind of build their own infrastructure of work, like how to do my job with technology,
Yeah.
I've heard, other companies maybe have some fear around giving too much power to everyone to build their own technology. So you being the biggest retailer, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has fears. One of
Yeah.
the aha moments for me as I sat down with our head of internal audit, who obviously is very focused on this. He's like, yeah, cracked my knuckles and went and started writing some Python this weekend. And so I wrote a script, but you guys wouldn't give me an API key, so I couldn't get it to production. And I was like, great, I'm glad the system works. And from that, I extrapolated to we have data governance policies, we have data privacy policies. These are all in place. We have hundreds of people whose job it is to keep us safe in InfoSec, in
Mm,
compliance, in audit, in legal. And so let's start with those policies. We spent, it's been 3 years since the original ChatGPT moment in November 22.
hmm.
We kind of spent the first couple of years trying to figure out what we could do and what would go wrong and, how to be safe. And, Doug got back from Davos a year ago and said, hey, Suresh, everybody else has agents. Why don't I have agents? And Suresh came to me and said, hey, we need some agents. And I said, great, I will go fast and build some agents. And the InfoSec leader, Jerry, who's, in the CISO Hall of Fame, was standing next to me. And he said, wait, hold on a second. And Suresh
Uh-huh.
said, Jerry, you keep us safe. Dave, you go fast. And from that point, I was able to start with my most senior, my technical fellows, and say, you guys start building agents, figure out what's going to go wrong. And every single one of them that I gave this mission to came back and said, I'm doing in 5 days what I used to do, take me 3 months and a team to do. And the
Wow.
next week they'd come back and say, what I built last week was horrible. I did the same thing in 3 days and it's much better. And so the iteration speed that they were able to come up with was mind blowing.
And so, if you think about that and you go back to that 2022 moment, maybe when ChatGPT was launched, what would you do differently, if anything, to where you sit today?
I think I would have dove in a little faster. I mean, there was a confluence of events, right? One, I can say, oh, we should have gone faster, but the tools had a lot of problems when they first came out, right? Two,
Hmm.
3 years ago, no one ever heard of agents. No one had ever heard of MCP. No one had ever heard of A2A. We were building little chatbots and assistants that didn't work very well. And so it may be that sort of it was a nice confluence of events saying we got the mission to go fast at the same time that agentic AI had sort of sprouted out of nothing. And so I would have wanted to challenge things sooner, but it may have been that this was the right speed.
Yeah, it sounds like it because otherwise, when you said kind of they came back and said, I want to redo it, you may have been actually redoing it more often by trying to go too fast early. But
Yeah,
would you say now as we go into 2026, now is the time to move fast?
for sure. I mean, I think
Yeah.
2025 was the time to move fast.
Okay.
2026 is going to be the time we scale. And I
Okay.
consider the last year an investment in learning. Right? We didn't know what we were doing a year ago. Nobody knew nothing. And so by giving sort of machetes to our technical fellows and having them blaze the trail through the wilderness, that we learned a lot from that and gave us the confidence to say maybe our data governance and our data privacy is good enough.
Mhm.
Let us go and check the edges of that and see where it breaks, and then quickly respond to that rather than try to think of anything that could go wrong before we do anything.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you're right. This scale, I'm not sure everyone is exactly where you are ready to scale, but I do think there's an urgency to move quickly. And would you say, based on your expertise in the industry, is today the time to do that, to move as quickly as you can?
Yeah, for sure. And I talk
For
to
sure.
friends at other companies, and they're
Yeah.
saying we're still trying to get, the basic LLMs through our security process. And I would encourage people, you got to start trying stuff or you'll get left behind.
Yeah, I I would I think that was the point I was trying to make. I'm not hearing from other people, executives that I speak to like you that are at that same pace. So I appreciate that you're leading the way because I think it inspires other leaders to maybe take some risks, move faster, give some technology to the hands of their teams and their associates and see what happens.
Yeah, and one particular week in last January, we were announcing the launch of our AI hub on the intranet, and it was just a link farm, but we started out saying, here's where you get the enterprise versions of these LLMs, and here's our internal stuff. And we went back and forth, and the legal team wanted us to have everybody sign effectively an NDA saying that we understand the risks of this, and we could be terminated. And we're like, no, 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 that's just going to make people scared. We had one EVP who said, I don't understand any of this. I'm not going to use it because I don't, I've got a good thing going here, and I don't want to risk it. And so I spent a couple weeks going back and forth with the legal team saying, this is too amorphous, doesn't give clear direction. And finally, our GC stepped in and she said, this is overly inclusive, logically inconsistent. Let me fix it. And we ended up with, as long as you don't put social security numbers, PII, or HIPAA data in, you're good.
Yeah.
And that was a much simpler message to folks than you can't put highly
Mhm.
sensitive data in, and you have to sign this scary form and all of these things. And so none of these things is rocket science, but they were important things to get to where we are today.
Yeah. And give yourself some freedom and the
Yeah.
power of maybe making some mistakes along the way, to not be afraid of the mistake.
Yeah. And
Sounds like.
I'm close with our chief compliance officer, and we were at lunch one day, and she said, I'm starting an enterprise risk management function. I was like, oh God, what is that? It sounds like another hoop to jump through. And she said, no, no, no. The biggest enterprise risk is moving too slow. And so we need to balance that enterprise risk with all of these other enterprise risks that we can quantify and we can be scared of. And so she's been a great partner in moving this forward.
Wow. And I want to jump to the customer because you have millions of people coming into your stores every year. What do you see as the biggest impact on the customer for this work?
Yeah. Again, I'm not focused so much on the frontline workers,
Yep.
but Walmart is an EDLP shop, everyday low prices for customers. In order to be EDLP, you have to be EDLC, everyday low cost. And so one of the things I'm working on is how do we take cost out, both by speeding up our development processes, but also by finding root causes with the AI and
Mm,
eliminating those root causes, and also with automating some of the works that we've outsourced to contractors and whatnot.
yeah.
And so all of those things, which we do at corporate, end up feeding EDLP and low prices for customers.
That's exactly right. And therefore impacts frontline associates. You're doing it without intentionally doing it for them. But you're right. Pricing, in stock, supply chains, all of this, maybe these nano agents are also doing work that supports the front line without intentionally doing so.
For sure. And I
Yeah.
will reference one thing we've built for the frontline associates directly, which is called the next best action. And so,
Okay.
associate has 2 minutes. Should they go restock something from the back room to a shelf? Should they pick an order that's going to go be delivered to a customer? The AI is working to give them direction so that they can do the most productive thing.
Wow. Wow. That's that. So you would ask the question. You would say, here are the list of tasks, or it's prioritizing internally
It says, do
for
this thing next.
do this. So it's like
Yeah.
no thought involved in it.
Yeah.
So
Let me, actually, one other thing that just came to me. One of our benefits that our associates love is a discount card. So they get X% off of all of what they buy at Walmart. And they used to have to, if they lost their discount card, they'd have to call the benefits help desk and they'd have to identify who they are, what store they work in. Are they corporate? Are they salaried? Are they hourly? Now they can just go, we've built an agent and you can go, I lost my discount card in our associate agent, and it will know this person is hourly, they're at this store, this is their address. And we say, would you like us to ship a new one to this address? And they say yes. And so that's a 12-second operation instead of 3 to 4 minutes. And that
wow,
does affect the associate's life directly.
it does. And at your enterprise level scale, it's a massive amount of time. It's support functions, at home office, all of it. So incredible. I want to wrap up just forward thinking for everyone just around the future. So just technology in general, you as being someone that's been in this very deep your entire life, your career, what are you most excited about the future of technology?
I do think, at least for me, the killer app is writing code faster. And so I've
Okay.
been talking about OODA loops, which is a term I learned a few weeks ago, but apparently it's decades old. But it's observe, orient, decide, act, and it's from the Air
Okay.
Force, I think. The pilots. Something about our kill ratio getting worse for the pilots, but they started this OODA loop and they got better. I probably didn't get that quite right. But the point being, can we observe faster? Can we orient faster? Can we decide faster? Can we act faster? And if we can tighten up that loop from having 3 months of pre-discovery for a project, and then 3 months of discovery, and then 3 months of UX before an engineer writes a single line of code, what we're doing now is say, you want us to build something? We took the yesterday off and we built this thing. What do you think of it? And almost for
Hmm.
sure they don't like it. The user doesn't like it, but they're like, can you move this button over here? Can you add this data thing? And within 2 days, we've done 9 months of discovery and pre-discovery and UX and all those things by putting the engineer close to the customer and tightening up those loops.
Wow. And you just see that as getting better and better over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk about ROI and what's above the line, what's the below the line. And if it takes you a year to build anything, that's a very expensive project. And so anything that you want to do has to be very well vetted if you're going to spend a year doing it. If you spend a day and a half doing it, you can move
Yeah.
pretty quickly and you don't have to worry so much about the ROI. And so, once the user sees this is exactly what they want, then they're bought in.
Right. And on that note, if you could give, every leader one piece of advice today in 2026, what would it be?
Dive in, just do
Dive
it.
in.
We spend a lot of time figuring out what's going to go wrong, or can I do it? And every engineer that has started vibe coding comes back and they're like, oh my god, my mind is blown. And then every non-engineer who's come back and said, oh my god, is mind blown. And so there's a few things in my career where I forced people to do something. One is like continuous deployment, and they were like, we don't have time to do this. And I'm like, you have to do it. And they come back and say, I can't believe we ever run our shop without this. This is another one of those where,
Mm-hmm.
our best engineers and even our not best engineers are coming back and saying, I can't believe we used to write code without the AI.
Yeah. And what are your favorite resources, I should say, for people to jump in?
Well, we've got this coding agent called Code Puppy. Again, this is an engineer one weekend was like, I really want a command line coding agent. And he built it over the weekend and he open sourced it and got like 50,000 downloads and was like, and he created a Walmart version. And so that's the best tool. But I also
Mm,
listen to some podcasts. I read on Twitter or X,
okay.
who's doing what with AI. And that's where I get a bunch of ideas. And then I come back to work on Monday and say, hey, you guys should try this. I saw it on a podcast this weekend. And, I add a little bit of value by doing
Mm.
that. But most of the engineers, are already off and going.
Right. Well, I really appreciate your time, Dave. I admire the work that you're doing. The Walmart as a company, as a brand, continues to be in the forefront of technology and people and experience and business in the country. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I want again, thank everyone for joining us today on the Voices from the Frontline, AI in Action, and a huge thank you to Dave Glick for sharing an extraordinary view into how Walmart is transforming work at scale. His vision shows what's possible when technology and humanity move together, where AI creates better experiences for associates, stronger outcomes for customers, and a future of work built on clarity, confidence, and purpose. I'm Ron Thurston. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next conversation.